Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll be finally running our application. But before running our application, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to make some changes to this activity.java file. So the first thing which we need to do is that we need to remove the code which we won't be needing. So we remove the toolbar right here, and we also remove the other things like this. So make sure that your code is cleaned up, and we also don't need these, and also it's better if you make this thing extend to the activity. So we type activity right here. So now once you have added activity, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to get the reference to these things right here so that we could perform some action when this things gets clicked. So you go inside this class right here. So the next thing which we need to do is that we need to have a reference to the edit text, the text view, and the database handler. So we go ahead and get the references, but first we declare them outside. So we type edit text my input, let's say we name it as my input, and for the text view, let's say we name it as my text, and for the database handler we type my db handler, and let's name it as simple db handler. So once we have this, we go inside this on create and we have reference to it. So we type my input equals, as this is an edit text, we type edit text, and then we get a reference by using find view by id r.id.my input. So once we have the reference to this, the next thing which we do is that we get a reference to the text view. So we type my text equals, we typecast it to text view, then again we use the same find view by id, and then we type r.id.my text. So once we have the reference to this, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to initialize the database handler. So we type db handler equals new, let's name it as my db handler. Then to this we pass in 4 parameters, and if you want to understand what we pass into this, we simply go here, and as you could see, this is the constructor for our my database handler, and it is going to take 4 parameters. The first parameter is going to be the context, then the name of the database, which is the database name, then the factory, and then finally the database version. So when we return back to this, we pass in these things. So the first thing is going to be this, so we type this. The next things are not going to be used, so we pass in null and null, and finally the database version is going to be 1. So once everything is done, we simply create one more method inside this on create for printing the database contents. So we type print database, and it is going to actually print out your database. Now it is going to show us an error, and that is because we have not yet created the method. So we go outside the on create and create the method. So we type public void print database, and in this method we are going to type in the code for printing out the database. So we create a string, so we type string, name it as db string equals db handler, which we have just created, and we use the method which is called as database to strings. So we type database to string, and this method right here is basically going to convert the contents of the database to a string. Now we simply need to change the my text value to this string which we have just extracted. So we type my text dot set text, and we pass in the value which we have just got. So we type db string over here, so that the value is set to the string which is extracted. Now once we do that, we also need to make sure that now the input field is empty. So we type my input dot set text, and we make it as empty. Now once this is done, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to create the method which we have added to the on click of the add button as well as delete button. So if you switch to the on click of this delete button, as you could see, we have added a method which is called as the delete button click, and for the add we have a method which is called as the add button click. So we go ahead and define these two methods inside this main activity.java. So we type public void, and the first method which we are going to add is going to be for add button. So we type add button clicked or add button click, and to this we pass in view, and inside it we write the code which we want to execute in order to add contents to database. So we type product equals new products, and to this we pass in the contents of the text view. So we type my input, which is nothing but the input which we are going to enter. Then we use the method dot get text, so in order to get the text, and we finally convert it to string and we pass it to this method. Now once this is done, we use the db handler to add the product. So we type db handler dot add product, and to this we pass in the product. So we type products here. Now finally we use the print database method to display the contents. So we type print database. So once a product is added, we need to print out the contents newly. So again we add the same method over here. So once we have the code for add button click, we go ahead and add the code for the delete button click. So we type in public void delete button click, and make sure that you have the spelling right, and make sure that you have the same name which you have specified to the on click. Then we type view, and inside the code we specify what needs to be done when this button is clicked, and basically we just want to delete the text which has been entered. So inside it we type string input text equals, then we get the reference to the my input. So we type my input dot get text, and this is basically going to extract the text, and then we need to convert it into a string. So we type dot to string. So once this is done, we just need to pass it to the db handler for deleting the product. So we type db handler dot delete product, and we need to pass in the input text which we have just created. So we pass in input text here, and this is going to delete the content in the database. And finally, after deleting, we need to display the contents in the database. So we type print database. So now once everything is done, we are ready to go and we are ready to launch our application on the emulator. So we save the code and we click this green button right here. So whenever we tried to run this application, actually we had an error, and after doing some research I found out that we need to actually leave a certain amount of space in between these queries, and even if you miss a single space, it is going to give you an error when you type in the code. So what I'll do is that I'll copy the source code and I'll paste it in the next lecture, so that it would be easier for you to copy the same code and you could paste it in your application, and then you could run. So once you are done copying the actual source code from here or from the below lecture, the next thing which you do is that you actually build an APK file so that you could run this application on your actual device, and that is because if you run it on your actual device, you won't be having any error. So that's how you create a basic data application in order to store the data into database. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.